as we also reminisce and look at that, historic address that our president made at the United Nations, the 77th General Assembly, and we try to unpack that, what it means for Kenya and the rest of the world. Above everything, just coming back home to see how our politicians are playing the game as we also set our eyes on the current administration. So much lined up for you, and we welcome you to be part and parcel of the conversation. I'll be telling you how you get to interact with us, but also there's a couple of other things that we'll be looking at as pertaining to the question of health. Very, very important that we understand for the bodybuilders. It's Thursday, and because it's Fitness Thursday, we won't hit the gym. Instead, we'll be speaking to nutritionists so that you can tell, or we can get to tell you how you get to balance nutrition and all these activities of hitting the gym and exercise. Very, very important to understand how you create that balance so that when you hit the gym, then you can be rest assured to get good results. And so much so also on the question of health, as I have told you, we're looking at also the question of GBV, how we make sure that we protect our women from these tough times and give them that safe space to fruition and to also understand that the world is indeed a better place for them. Welcome on board. How you interact with us is hashtag Morning Café at Linda_Alelah TV 47KE. We sample your comments as we continue with the broadcast. TV 47KE is across all our social media platforms, and I'll be looking at what you have to say. We'll also be having young tax, young blood that we speak of in terms of, the young tax in the world of politics. And we also get to understand at this point of appointments and nominations, just what is the space of these young ones that would appear vulnerable, but then again, also very helpful in terms of shaping tomorrow's space in the country. And so make sure that you are part of this very, very important conversation. And we have the Daily Nation, the Standard newspaper, as well as the People Daily. These are the papers that we'll be looking at this morning as we unpack and as well unravel all this that is in the world of the papers. Also later on to look at what my team has prepared in terms of news. Just a sneak preview of what the front pages of these papers detail. We have Ruto locks in Uhuru ministers. President William Ruto's administration slams the brakes on foreign travel for all existing Uhuru cabinet secretaries, commits them to active official duty until their replacement are sworn in while slashing their powers. This is captured on page 4. We're looking at the faces of Fred Matiang'i, Joseph Kinyua, Peter Muya, Joe Musheru, Mutai Kagwe, Kiriako Tobiko, as well as Najib Balala, as the president is expected to come back in the country. And what they say would be his first assignment once he's back is to name the cabinet. Well, that's a question of wait and see. As to the constitution, no pressure for him to do this, but it would be necessary so that he can steer the country forward with his very own executive or his very own government's raft of matters. His plate full as to what he seeks to address. Indeed, he will definitely need a powerful and strong cabinet to make sure that he steer this forward. Also on the front page, and that is on the national perspective and captured on the Standard newspaper, definitely President William Ruto with the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the United Nations headquarters in New York, as of course he also made that maiden speech, and we'll be looking at it as we continue with the broadcast. Kenya in the mix as 48 people have been charged with the 30 billion shillings fraud in United States, and American authorities say defendants created firms that falsely claimed that is to offer it to buy luxury cars, jewelry and property in Kenya. A story captured on page 28. We'll be looking at that to get to understand the same. It's quite, web, and in comparison to what played out in the country as to the KEMSA scandal, this is quite unfortunate, and we get to see whether or how the United States then handles this. It's a story that finds itself also on the other paper newspapers, and we'll be looking at the same NMS hot topic in Senate induction, a story captured on page 19. We all understand that the Senate is on for that induction process to chart the way forward. Also, conversations as to whether the NMS holds or not is also one of the key things that have been discussed. This on the specs of devolution. Remember, the main overseers of devolution are the senators, and therefore it is their business to make sure that every county is functional and that these people in Mashinani then are getting to reap the benefits of devolution. New speakers take over at the level of the counties as well. A story captured on page 8 and 9. Lots of drama, but most importantly, nice transition as they spearhead, as we have speakers sworn in, as well as the members of the county assemblies, so that they can forge forward towards making sure that the business of the house, most importantly the businesses of the counties, then are steered way. Malkia sky high targets, a story captured on page 48. That is in the world of sports as we celebrate our very own ladies. The Malkia strikers tipped to reach second round, that is at the global event. Washu and Lungaho say team had good preparations ahead of the World Championships, and Malkia strikers face Netherlands tomorrow, in the opening match in Amsterdam, and we'll be following up on that. And of course, we have the likes of Dennis Otieno to make sure that you are up to tabs as to the same. The front page of the Daily Nation, and yes, if Mr. Director could put it up for us on your screens, yes, we have that. And America on the trail of stolen billions slashed in Kenya. A story captured on page 6 and 7. American detectives have named several Kenyans as being behind the forgery scheme that defrauded the U.S. government of more than about 30 billion at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic by making and billing false claims to a feeding program that is rolled out, or that was rolled out to ease pandemic woes. This is captured on the front page and largely expounded on all this aspects of the Daily Nation. And of course, 30 billion, the suspects defrauded the U.S. government of more than about 30 million, then embarked on a global shopping spree from the United States to Kenya, Nairobi and Diani, South Sea. Some of the billions were used to buy several properties in the South Sea neighborhood of the city and potentially tilting market prices, as well as beach villas. The suspects also splashed on exclusive beach villas in Diani, Kwale County, and went on holidays in exotic locations around the world where the loot played out. Of course, the cars, the holidays, the real estate. This is quite unfortunate, but also we'll be getting details of the same and how then this will definitely be handled amid all these tough questions of corruption, not just in the country, but across the global fraternity. Another story that is on the front page, and perhaps the main story, Ruto freezes jobs tender payments, a story captured on the front page, and it's payback time, as one would want to put it. The president accused ministers of blocking his state house bid during the campaigns, and we all saw how that played out. And then the order that speaks of the decree has frozen appointments, or this decree that has frozen appointments by CSs to boards of state corporations or state agencies, and redeployment or any ranks within ministries and state departments. Further ministries, state departments and state agencies are restricted from engineering or effecting payments of more than about 50 million without the Treasury's approval, a directive intended to stop last-minute spending sprees by outgoing officials. Remember, also that declaration that, the spree was quite huge on the last lapse of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And perhaps, there's that need for investigations to be conducted to get to understand that. Joseph Kinyo, on the other hand, places this warning: we wish to underscore that ministerial actions during the transition are limited to general administration and stewardship, and of course over the ministerial portfolio, and reads a circular by head of public service. Definitely we'll be looking to get to understand just what are the ramifications of that and how then these offices and these CSs will receive the same consolidating his rule. And of course, as he makes this maiden address at the United Nations in a move that is likely to clip the powers of ministers and senior government officials during the transition period, well, the president, through the head of public service, Joseph Kamanya, also bars cabinet secretaries from foreign travel, big money expenditures, and making appointments to plum state jobs, hugely cutting their powers as they ride out their last days in office. That had nothing to do with his speech yesterday, but the photo that you see right on the front page is him and Antonio Guterres, who's the Secretary General of the United Nations. And so be taking a look at that to make sure that we also look at what was addressed yesterday night, that is yesterday evening, according to Kenyan time, as per that very, very important address, at a couple of matters that the president then touches on, calling upon the global fraternity to make sure that they work in tandem to address the questions of, the tough times, that the global fraternity would understand the debt and the crisis that it brings to these middle-level countries that are trying to come up. Also the question of the climate, and also addressing the bottom-up aspect, which is very, very important. Also another story that has been captured, Raila calls ODM crisis meeting, and ODM party leader Raila Odinga has indeed called upon parliamentary group meetings next week to quell disquiet that is in the party over House leadership before Parliament begins its sitting. Besides the leadership lineup, the meeting will nominate chairpersons and vice chairpersons for House committees, a story captured on page 5, which is very, very important for us to address. St. Paul's University students win 120 million in shillings, that is in US competition. That is the HALT prize, competing in the finals of the 2022 HALT prize as EcoBanner Limited at the Clinton Global Initiative. Congratulations to them. We've hosted several students who have taken part in the HALT prize, and indeed to see Kenyan students flourishing, especially on the aspect of innovation and how best they can make or they can tap into the world of technology, is something that is worth celebrating. We're talking about how they can boost biodegradable sanitary pads business, which is very, very important. And so we skip that and get to what it is that we have on the People Daily. We have the People Daily. Okay, let's have the People Daily up as we take a look at what has been captured as well on the People Daily. There's this story of the St. Paul students being appreciated equally on President William Ruto's, address yesterday. That made an address very, very important. And yes, there you go, Kenya Varsity students bag 120 million prize. Congratulations to them. Also on members of parliament and how they have managed to speak to the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC, to address the question of the allowances and push salary team. It appears that SRC has bowed down to that pressure, and the commission allows legislators to have their way on car grants and other perks after 10 3-hour talks. Remember, the Speaker of the National Assembly, that is Moses Wetangula, had confirmed and affirmed to the members of Parliament on the induction process that they are in talks with the SRC to make sure that this then is addressed. Also, our hand on the question on the NGCDF, the Chief Justice as well articulating that and, justifying why the court termed it necessary to, of course, clamp on the CDF project. But then again, we'll also get updates on the same as to the survival of this crucial funding to the level of the constituencies, so that we can also get to see how it manages the activities down there. Remember, hugely it was the question of security and education. Most of the bursaries then would come from that. But just what is the fate of it? A question of wait and see. Top IEBC boss sent home over polls draw. Deputy CEO Ruth Kulundu is interdicted over a meeting of 4 commissioners at the center of the election dispute that rocked Wafula Chebukati's team, even as she denies the wrongdoing. The ODM side calling upon the commission to make sure that they bring her back, reinstate her, or else, of course, it will not be an easy one, claiming that this is a direct target against those that that were, or those ones that appear to be in support of the other side, that is the Azimio One Kenya Alliance. And National Music Festivals hit high tone. Also, that is being celebrated and acknowledged as our students continue to showcase what then they can do in terms of, their talents. We shelve the papers. Let's briefly cross over to what my team has prepared. Mombasa City County residents can now breathe a sigh of relief. That is after the county government moved to clear the garbage menace in the county. Well, the Mombasa County government has started collecting garbage from the streets. And as our very own Mombasa-based reporter Alelah reports, Mombasa County collects at least 1,000 tons of waste. That is per day, with 9% of that waste being plastic.
Addressing the press earlier today, Mombasa Governor Abdul Swamad Sharif Nasir said that his government has put in place measures and strategies that will deal with the garbage menace in the county, promising residents soon the garbage menace will be a thing of the past.
Inaweza kuchukua takriban siku 3 mpaka 4. Tukitoka hapa kuna na nyingine ile ambayo iliyoko VOK. Nashukuru ile Mbaraki tayari imemaliziwa na imefungwa. Kutawekwa maaskari wa anti-dumping katika maeneo haya. Ili katika zile transfer points, the role is very simple. Mtu anataka zake anazibwaga ndani ya lori na nini. Na kuna sheria, and we'll now have to inform the public kuhusu sheria hii.
According to Nasir, the county has the ability to collect only 60% of the waste collected every day, saying that he aims to work with other stakeholders to address the menace.
Sababu ya hii kufika namna hii kwa sababu uwezo wa kaunti ya Mombasa ni kukusanya tani 600 peke yake. So when you leave a place like this and decide to leave it unattended, automatically imekuwa ni dump site. We can't allow this.
However, Nasir has urged private collection companies to embrace the new directives issued by the county government, including disposing of waste in designated areas.
Naomba watu wa Mombasa pia nao wachukue majukumu yao. Kwamba wewe ambaye unapeana taka kutoka nyumbani kwako, kaa ukijua hizi taka zako zinapelekwa wapi. Usimpatie mtu takataka aende kumwaga, manake tukimshika yule atatuleta kwako nyumbani, tutachukua wewe. Kwa hivyo wewe ambaye unataka ndani ya nyumba, hakikisha zimemwagwa mahali panapostahili.
The governor was speaking when he received tuk-tuks and machines that will aid in the conversion of plastic waste into valuable products from the Worldwide Fund for Nature WWF. Alelah for TV47 in Mombasa County.
Kenya has joined the world in marking Peace Day, with this year's theme being End Racism, Build Peace. This as the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, lauded Kenyans for maintaining peace before, during and after the 9th election. Andren Kilemi reports.
Kenya joined the world in marking Peace Day, with this year's theme being End Racism and Build Peace. Speaking during this year's celebration held in Nairobi, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission Chief Executive Officer Skita Ocharo commended Kenyans for ensuring peace before, during and after the August 9 general election, further urging the country to focus on building a more equal, just, equitable, inclusive and healthier society.
This year's theme was End Racism, Build Peace. We have seen at least Kenya prove to the whole world that it has matured in terms of democracy, and even various countries did not imagine that we are going to have peace before, during and after elections, which we have, and now we are looking at stakeholders. How do we need to do so that we ensure that it sticks?
The youth have further been applauded for refusing to be used to cause chaos during the campaign period, with calls directed to both the county and national government to create more job opportunities for the youth.
Most of the times, there's a stereotype that young people are the victims when it comes to election violence and all those things. But you could see even in the border sectors, young people like 18 to 35, like I said before, were there spearheading peace through civic education and through now bodies like NCIC, who went out there to just try and support them in each and every way, just to make sure that they were well engaged and all those things, the UN and the Global Peace Foundation. So my request to the government, the current government now, is that let there be opportunities for young people to serve this country. Let there be opportunities for young people to shine and make hay right now. Because I believe if we are well empowered, then we are the future leaders of today and tomorrow.
As the UN, we are extremely proud of Kenya for marking this extremely peaceful milestone and for all of the Kenyan youth who participated and contributed positively to making this happen.
In Mombasa County, non-governmental organizations in both collaboration with security officials took to the streets to preach the importance of peace, as religious leaders in Bungoma County, on the other hand, called on every Kenyan to ensure peace prevails among all communities.
Tunashukuru viongozi wote, tunashukuru viongozi wa dini waliotumia makanisa, waliotumia misikiti na walokuwa wakiomba hata majumbani kuhakikisha amani patikane Kenya.
Vijana hatutachochewa tena, vijana tutazidi kudumisha amani, vijana tutaishi kwa upendo na vijana tutazidi kujikimu.
Every year, the International Day of Peace is observed around the world on the 21st of September with the aim of building a society where everyone is treated equally, regardless of race, class or community. Andrin Kilemi, TV 47.
Now, Kenya marks exactly 9 years since the Westgate mall attack that left 68 people dead and 100 others injured in the attack. And of course, with a sense of terror and trauma that shocked the country. Our reporter Lucky Heriano spoke to Ben Mulwa, who escaped death by a whisker on that fateful day. And as he reports, the survivors of the terror attack have recalled the horrifying scenes that changed their lives.
9 years ago, as it was the norm every Saturday, Kenyans converged here with their families, at least to have some good time, but little did they know the terror would strike. Ben Mulwa, one of the victims who cheated on death, says on that fateful day he had planned to meet with his friend, venue being the Westgate Mall in Westlands.
Ukitizama ilikuwa Jumamosi, siku tu ya kawaida kama siku zingine zozote. Nilikuwa na mpango wa kwenda kula chakula cha mchana na rafiki yangu mwingine. Manake wakati huo sikuwa naishi mbali na jumba la Westgate. Na wakati tulikubaliana tupatane wakati wa chakula cha mchana, ikawa ni rahisi tupatane hapo katika jumba la Westgate.
Other than Mulwa, several Kenyans met here on that fateful day. As Mulwa narrates, he heard some gunshots, especially at the rooftop of the building, where children were participating in a cooking game competition, a tragic incident that claimed the lives of many children.
Sauti ya juu. Baada ya hapo, ikawa hakuna yoyote ambaye hata alishughulika. Pengine inaweza kuwa ni manake jumba lile lilikuwa na maduka mengi ya kifahari na mabenki. Pengine kunaweza kuwa tu kuna kizaazaa kimetokea, pengine kuna wizi. Kwa hivyo tukadhania pengine ni shughuli tu ya askari polisi.
Mulwa tells me he saw the security guard at the building scampering for safety when he and his friend got off their car and hide.
Wametoka mbio. Niliona walinzi wawili wamekimbia. Mmoja nikaona ameelekea upande wa basement ya jumba, mwingine akaenda hadi rooftop, na kuna yule ambaye bado alikuwa amesalia akikagua gari letu, maana tulikuwa magari kama mawili na mengine nyuma yetu. Ndipo ikawa sasa unasikia milio ya risasi imekaribia kabisa. Mimi kwa fikra zangu bado nilikuwa nadhani ni wizi pengine unaendelea.
Ben was admitted and later discharged from hospital. This is when it dawned on him that he survived a terror attack.
Na kile nakumbuka ni kwamba alifyatua risasi, manake hiyo risasi ni majaliwa Mungu tu. Hiyo risasi ilinipita hapa kwa kichwa, ikapiga ukuta hapa nyuma yangu. Hadi leo hii hata nikipita hapo wanaona bado kuna lile tundu. Hata wakati walikuwa wanafanya renovations nadhani hawakutengeneza hapo. Na ikawa mambo yalikuwa matukio yalikuwa yanatokea haraka sana, ikawa ni ngumu hata kuelewa ni nini kinaendelea. Sasa sikuwa najua kama nimepigwa risasi ama kumefanyika nini.
Today marks exactly 9 years since 4 men armed with rifles and grenades went on a rampage unleashing terror at the Westgate Mall in Westland, Nairobi, sparkling a 4-day standoff that claimed the lives of 68 people. However, Kenyans have more questions than answers about the fateful day. Reporting for TV 47, I'm Lucky Heriano.
Now, majority of members of county assemblies have taken oath of office, with some incidences standing out. In Kirinyaga and Bomet counties, for example, 2 members who have imparted ability to hear were sworn in using the Kenya Sign Language. Here is Sharon Baranga with more.
Harrison Kariuki, a member of County Assembly from Karumandi Ward in Kirinyaga County, took to the stand to take his oath of office. Kariuki, who has a hearing impairment, was sworn in using the Kenya Sign Language.
Mimi ni special educated na represent disability Kirinyaga County, na niko na furaha sana kuapishwa represent watu wako na disability kwa hii community. So it's possible na watu wako na disability. And nataka kushukuru Mungu kwa sababu amenipea dream kweli na naona nikiachieve. Na niko tayari kudumia watu ambao wako na PWD kwa kaunti ya Kirinyaga.
Kariuki is not new to politics, having made a stab at the nomination for Karumandi Ward in April, but lost to the current MCA Carol Mureithi.
Before, nilikuwa nafanya kazi Nandi County. Nilikuwa nafanya ku develop, but hata Kirinyaga hapa watu wako na disability, people with disability. So that's why nataka wapate accessibility. For example, kwa buildings waweze kukuwa na accessibility. Staff focus na focus with all disabilities, kila aina disability. So so we made in one image. Mkumbuki Mungu ametutengeneza hivyo. So nataka kuwa na accessibility and also kwa services.
In Bomet County, Lily Cherotich was also sworn in as nominated member of County Assembly using the sign language. Lily says she will present issues affecting people with disabilities in the County Assembly. Sharon Baranga, TV 47.
And in the same breath, Kakamega County Assembly was momentarily rocked by chaos Wednesday morning after former Shinyalu Member of Parliament Justus Kizito and former senatorial candidate Brian Lishenga were denied access to the Assembly. This as more devolved units embarked on the election of their speakers and deputy speakers respectively. And as Stanley Nyaringita reports, 45 MCAs are expected to take their oath of office in Kisii County today.
It was a chaotic affair at the gates of the Kakamega County Assembly. After former Shinyalu MP Justus Kizito and former senatorial candidate Brian Lishenga were denied access on claims that their names were not among those vying for the speaker position.
We are opposed to that idea because, one, we are not aware that there is any list where our names are missing. There is no official communication. Nobody has said anything to me.
After the swearing in of the 89 MCAs, it was time for the rubber to meet the road, and incumbent Speaker James Namatsi carried the day. Namatsi, who garnered 60 votes, promised to facilitate a smooth collaboration between the county executive and county assembly.
We're going to ensure that we put up the necessary legislative framework so that we have ward-based projects so that they are able to reach the very person at the very low level.
Nandi County also read from the same script after an aspirant, Fatma Hussein, moved to court in a move aimed at postponing the process. Hassan claims that her name had been struck out of the list of those who had been selected.
I qualified and I was gazetted on 27th as the only female who qualified for minority category. And to my surprise, on the last gazettement that came on 12th, I was replaced by someone who did not apply for minority category and who was also gazetted as a marginalized.
At the same time, things looked spick and span in Machakos County, where Anne Mwikali Kusia garnered 51 votes against Maendeleo Chapter lawyer Bernard Mungata to emerge the speaker. Other county assemblies that conducted the once in 5 years constitutional mandate on Wednesday include, among others, Wajir, Elgeyo Marakwet, Laikipia and Kajiado. Thursday, A total of 45 MCAs are expected to be sworn in Kisii County.
A record number of 28 people picked nomination papers, but those who have applied are 14. The vetting is based on Article 193, 1 and 2. And basically the major qualification is that one must be qualified to be a member of county assembly. And I think that is where we'll restrict ourselves to.
Stanley Nyiringita, TV 47, Nairobi.
All right, and Azimio la Umoja One Kenya legislators have slammed officials from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, for interdicting the Deputy Chief Executive Officer Ruth Kulundu. The leaders allied to the Azimio One Kenya coalition claim Kulundu was interdicted following what they termed as exposure to the rot within the IEBC Commission.
IEBC Deputy Chief Executive Officer in charge of operations Ruth Kulundu has been accused of convening a plenary meeting on August 26th without the approval of the IEBC CEO. A section of Azimio legislators led by Ugunja Member of Parliament Opiyo Wandayi have called for a reinstatement within the next 48 hours.
She was served with an interdiction letter at 10 a.m. yesterday. Now, what is again more curious in this saga is that the decision to interdict Madam Ruth Kulundu was apparently or purportedly made by only 3 commissioners. Listen to us. You are going home. And if you refuse to go home, we shall take you home. Yes. Yeah. If you dare refuse to go home at the end of your contractual terms, the people of Kenya will push you home.
Nominated Member of Parliament Sabina Chege pointed out that the move to interdict Kulundu was a witch hunt led by Wafula Chebukati's wing in the commission for having assisted the 4 dissenting commissioners.
If it was a man, would you have treated her the same? Or him the same? Yes. You know, we cannot run IEBC as somebody's or a personal kiosk, not even a shop. And we have seen IEBC from the time we were at Bomas. We have seen what has been happening. We even saw the commissioners being heckled in Mombasa. And the chairman was there, smiling in his heart.
The Azimio leaders revealing that Kulundu was pivotal in unearthing the rot within the commission, and that is the reason the CEO is now on a case.
What the IEBC commissioners are doing, they are simply terrorizing staff. We wish him now to take his mantle and now resist these terrorists from antagonizing and actually pushing out staff who are the right thing. This is the right place now, Honorable Kashagwa, to come up and say you are defending Kenyans. Don't even bother about those whom DCI was bothering about.
And right now, this country has a lot of work that needs to be done. And for us to do that work, we need to stop the witch hunt. We need to strengthen our institutions, not weaken them. And at the end of the day, we as Azimio family, we stood firmly and said we'll abide by the rule of law.
Among the issues Kulundu is being accused of is conducting plenary meeting that was attended by the 4 dissenting commissioners who had opposed Chebukati's official declaration of the presidential election at Bomas of Kenya.
Now, new cracks have emerged within the ODM party over the sharing of House leadership slots in the National Assembly. At the core of the wrangles is the majority leader position, which was given to the Ugunja Member of Parliament, Opiyo Wandayi. And as Elizabeth Mutuku reports, a former minority leader in the National Assembly, John Badi, has launched a scathing attack on the party leadership, saying that was an act of betrayal.
Cracks are emerging within the Orange Democratic Movement Party ODM over parliament leadership following the lineup which was unveiled by Azimio One Kenya coalition last weekend.
At the level of the National Assembly, we announced the leader of majority as Honorable Opiyo Wandayi. We announced Deputy Leader of Majority, Honorable Robert Mbui, the Chief Whip, Honorable Junet Mohammed, Deputy Chief Minority Whip, Honorable Sabina Chege.
The ODM party chairman and former minority leader in the National Assembly, John Mbadi, has lamented over the move by the Raila-led party to settle on Ugunja Member of Parliament Opiyo Wandayi as the majority leader, saying that signified that he has failed in his leadership in the party and his tenure as the minority leader in the 12th Parliament.
Then would you have Opiyo Wandayi, who is my junior in the party, leading me in the National Assembly? It does not make sense unless you tell me now to surrender also the position of chairmanship so that he becomes my boss in all aspects.
However, a section of Azimio MPs dismissed Mbadi claims, saying that he is just nominated member of the National Assembly and cannot purport to lead them in the August House. Alego Usonga, Member of Parliament Samatandi, pointed out that the leadership of Azimio One Kenya well guided them on the coveted House leadership slots, a decision which was accepted by majority of the leaders.
Opiyo Wandayi, John Mbadi and Julian Mohammed. And both of them were given an opportunity at the Stoniadi conference to pitch for their bids. All of them addressed members of the ODM PG, and it is the ODM PG that resolved that those names be forwarded to BAMBA to make a decision. Some members wanted us to take a vote, but we said if we took a vote, that vote could divide the party. So members agreed that among the three, whoever BAMBA would pick would be our leader. And you know, BAMBA sat with the coalition members, partners, and they gave us the Honorable Opiyo Wandayi. So I don't think there's any other further conversation. That matter, in my view, is closed, and that is what it is.
If a vote was to be taken... Mbadi has, however, maintained that he is senior in the House, regardless of whether he is nominated or elected. The nominated MP has since written to the party leadership, protesting the appointment of Wandayi, pushing for changes.
Suffer, they will be in pain, but what we are saying is that we are in the face of healing, and we are urging everybody to rally behind the new leadership for the good of our coalition. We need to work. There's so much work to be done. You've just seen the issues that we need to tackle. We need to put the government to check. And now what we need is let us rally behind the new leadership so that we can perform on behalf of Kenya, the people of Kenya.
Positions in the Senate and National Assembly such as Majority Leader, Minority Leader and their deputies, Majority and Minority Whip and their deputies as well, are some of the most eyed positions and come with additional packages. Payment perks and having an influence on government bills and policies are some of the reasons driving members of Parliament to strive to get into the leadership positions.
You do not bond and become united. You're going to be ruled throughout the life of this parliament.
Elizabeth Mutuku, TV47, Nairobi.
Cracks within Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party continue to grow wider as the blame game on who is responsible for Raila Odinga's loss during the August polls continues. This as a section of Raila Odinga's allies have been accused of letting their guard down, with some labelled disorganized. Flora Lemoke with that.
Raila Amolo Odinga has unsuccessfully vied for the presidency 5 times. In 2022, all odds seeming to be on his side, following the support from immediate former President Uhuru Kenyatta, in what resulted into an interesting turn of events since he ended up carrying the burden of the Jubilee failures in the second term.
If indeed we had the system, if indeed we had the backing of the entire government, why then during bombers was I nearly killed? If the government was there, did we ever have the system? Or was this actually designed for it to be that way?
Is that we seemed to be part of the Uhuru administration. We seemed to be the ones explaining the things that went wrong in the Uhuru administration. We seemed to be the ones on the defense. We seemed to have been the ones who were covering up corrupt people.
The blame games within the Azimio faction continue to escalate, with Raila's 5th loss being attributed to unfaithful close allies who have been labelled as disorganized. It is alleged that Odinga's 5th stab at the presidency was jeopardized by allies who could not put the house in order and ensure agents are present at every polling station and especially the National Tallying Center.
Did Baba lose the election?
I don't think so. There are places, there are areas where probably we should have handled differently, including the stealing of our votes.
We ought to have taken a lot of serious precautions to ensure that we had all our ducks in a row. When it comes to the issue of our agents, there's absolutely no reason as to why we should have depended on anyone else to be able to organize our agents for us.
Contrary to previous years where Odinga supporters turned up to vote in large numbers, especially in his strongholds, this year a different scenario played out since President William Ruto had made inroads in the Western and Nyanza regions.
So we knew we were going into a very closely contested election. We knew that it was going to be influenced by regions. We knew that once again it was going to be another ethnic census. And you saw that's how it turned out to be. William Ruto got votes in the Rift Valley, he got votes in central Kenya and Mount Kenya in the diaspora.
Even after the Supreme Court ruling, Odinga still insists that the IEBC did not conduct a free and fair election, and the Supreme Court judgment was not based on facts and the law.
The attitude, the thuggery, the corruption, and the cynicism of the Supreme Court judges. The words that the Chief Justice used against us have never been used in our courts, even in the dark days of single-party rule and state capture of the judiciary.
So we are still convinced that there are things that the IEBC did that were not proper. We are still convinced that the IEBC was not a neutral umpire in this exercise.
Leaders allied to Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party have however braced themselves to be the opposition, a move that is meant to keep the executive in check.
At this time, we want to sit back, strategize. We want to consolidate our policies and our alternative views. And on the floor of Parliament, and even outside, we will robustly criticize the government where it goes wrong, and we will support it where we believe it is doing the right thing.
It is watered down the tunnel. We can't cry over spilled milk. It's time for us to take on our serious legislative process, unite the country, and we'll live to fight another day.
And as we have indicated earlier as Azimio team, we are there to defend the rule of law.
The Supreme Court judges are expected to give a full judgment of the presidential election petition next week, as Na Kenya Party leader Martha Karua vows to move to the East African Court to seek justice on the same.
President William Ruto is expected to name his cabinet anytime this week, with prominent names expected to feature in his cabinet, a list among, of course, them sitting members of parliament. And as Mike Agungo reports, some of those likely to be picked in the cabinet position include Ruto's close allies and those who failed to clinch any seat in the August polls.
Let us be understanding.
The president is expected to name his close confidants in his inaugural cabinet. Those who have stood with him in his political journey expected to feature largely. However, some of those he is likely to pick include sitting members of parliament and senators in what is likely to necessitate by-elections. Lawmakers close to the president were left out in parliament leadership roles, an indication that they are likely expected to resign and join the executive.
We've just come from elections. What we need now is healing. There's a lot of healing. So the fewer elections we have, I think the better for this country. Yeah, now I know we have the Bungoma one, where I come from. If I had a choice, we should leave it there.
I think it is the prerogative of the president to pick whoever he deems fit that can deliver on the Kenya Kwanza agenda. So we cannot tie his hands on whom to pick or whom not to pick.
Having served as majority leader in the 12th Parliament, Garissa Township MP Aden Duale did not express his interest in the parliamentary leadership position because he is likely to be in Dr. Ruto's cabinet. Another close ally of the president, Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, is also expected to resign.
I want to tell the president.
From the Mount Kenya region, Kandara MP Alice Wahome is also expected to resign and join the cabinet. Wahome has an added advantage, as Ruto had earlier promised to appoint 50% of women to his cabinet. Wahome, a key critic of former President Kenyatta, is among the founders of Ruto's United Democratic Alliance Party. The lawyer and seasoned politician took Uhuru by the horns as they fall out with Ruto, and the then DP turned nasty and dramatic. Duale, Wahome and Murkomen resignations are set to trigger by-elections in their respective electoral areas, with voters expected to pick their replacements.
The people going back to by-elections to elect their new leader is not something new. It has been happening previously before, and I don't think if that is a problem. What is important that it must be driven by the desire to see fit for purpose the best person for the best job for the Republic of Kenya.
But the principle also, of course, is the financial effect it has, because now money has to be looked for to fund up this particular election. And we realize as a country now, we are literally stuck up in debt. We are actually literally living beyond our means. So it will literally, affect the government settling down, you see, because we need now to embark on policies that are going to bring this country back on its feet.
The three politicians are high-ranking members of Ruto's inner circle, who are instrumental in the Kenya Kwanza presidential campaigns. Because of the need to have a strong representation of UDA in parliamentary leadership, Kiharu MP Ndindi Nyoro, who also hails from Murang'a County as is Wahome, will remain in parliament. The vibrant and straight-shooting second-term lawmaker was touted to be among those who will make it to Ruto's cabinet.
But yeah, you have too many people, qualified Kenyans, who can work. Why must you go why must you go and get someone who has been already elected by people, already on a payroll, to give him a job when he already has a job or she has a job?
Because as we speak, we are in a deep economic hole. We look at our debt situation, very, very bad. So if we have to put in again more money into other elections, of course, now we will be digging deeper into the hole when we're already in a hole.
Bungoma County is also expected to hold a by-election following the election of Moses Wetangula as the National Assembly Speaker.
So I doubt whether it's a very big issue when it comes to doing the by-elections. They'll have to find the money and so that they can conduct the elections within the time frame that has been provided by the Constitution.
Meanwhile, Uhuru Kenyatta cabinet secretaries will continue to serve until President Ruto names his cabinet. However, the outgoing cabinet secretaries will not be able to make new appointments.
Now, with the CS question at hand, President William Ruto is the only person with the answer on whether he will try his best to avoid as many by-elections as possible in a bid to avoid spending more with IEBC. Mike Kagwango, TV 47, Nairobi.
Now, 7 days in office, and President William Ruto has implemented a number of issues he promised to look into once he ascends to power. And it all began after he was sworn in on September 13th as the 5th president. And as Mogi William reports, President Ruto hit the ground running by making policy changes in a bid to fulfill promises made during his campaigns, among them scrapping the fuel subsidy in a policy shift against subsidies.
Hours after his swearing in, Ruto appointed the 6 judges that were appointed to the Court of Appeal 3 years ago by the Judicial Service Commission but rejected by his predecessor, former President Uhuru Kenyatta. The president himself presided over their swearing-in ceremony at State House day 2 after he took oath of office.
Supporting the judiciary so that the judiciary can discharge its mandate, it is important that we have an efficient, independent judiciary.
Another policy shift taken by the William Ruto-led administration was on subsidy, with a directive for removal of fuel cost stabilization program issued. President Ruto, in his inauguration speech, noted the fuel and food subsidies had not borne any fruit, noting that the fuel subsidy alone cost taxpayers a total of 144 billion shillings, with 60 billion shillings being used in the last 4 months, albeit Ruto making it clear that his new administration will ease high food inflation by subsidizing the cost of farm inputs. The national government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, has announced that it will allocate 3.5 billion shillings to subsidize the cost of fertilizer so as to cushion farmers against the current high cost of fertilizer.
When you subsidize fertilizer, you are actually investing in the right things. The fact that we are being truthful to Kenyans and telling them it is an arduous task in terms of turning around the economy and the situation in our country, and all of us will have to make sacrifices and play a role.
5 days ago, the Treasury designated the Inspector General of Police to be the accounting officer of the National Police Service following the directives by President William Ruto, meaning that the entire NPS budget will be managed by the Office of the Inspector General of Police. Initially, the National Police Service budget was controlled by the Office of the President, with the Interior Principal Secretary serving as the accounting officer. President Ruto said the National Police Service operational autonomy has been undermined by continued financial dependence on the Office of the President and promised to change the situation. Another issue that elicited mixed reaction is the directive that saw port operations being reverted to the coastal region, thus reversing an earlier order by former President Uhuru Kenyatta.
He said that he's going to make sure that the operations is back in Mombasa. So it is back and we are happy.
Leaders weighing to the performance of President Ruto, terming his performance commendable.
We are going to, as per our manifesto, what we have done, these things are going to come into effect.
So it's not even 100 days. It is a case of giving the government a chance to deliver their promises.
We are there to support him. Me, I'm on the government side, so I'm there to encourage him and push and ensure that we deliver to the promises of people that we give as Kenya Kwanza.
Making a handful of promises, all eyes are on the Kenya Kwanza Ruto-led government on how it performs in its first 100 days. Mwigi William, TV47, Nairobi.
And from that story by Mwigi William, which also forms the basis of our conversation this morning, let's briefly take a look at what the roads are like this morning. And right here in Nairobi, we start off from around Thika Road. Briefly, a sneak preview of what Thika Road is like. Remember, it's a Thursday morning, not so bad in terms of what plays out the Thika Road. And so we start off from this area of Githurai. It would have a full screen of the same. I think it would be advisable, yes. And then from Githurai and going down, not so much of traffic. That is around the TRM area to the Garden City Mall. Some tenets of traffic, but not so bad. Pretty much of an ease in comparison to the other days. And down to this size around De La Rue and around the KCA University, a little bit clogged up if you were taking that direction. And therefore, it's important for you to be keen on this. You'd expect some bit of a delay if you are taking that direction. And down to this size of Alelah eases up a bit, and down to this size of Muthaiga eases up. But then on this bit, yes, from Muthaiga and all the way to Pangani, it's pretty heavy. As you can see, the red bit pretty much, of a delay for a majority of people who will be taking Thika Road, and therefore this is what you expect in the event that you are taking that direction. On this other side, let's see, as you come from Kiambu Road around Muthaiga police station as well, you'll find some tenets of traffic that would get you a little bit delay. Let's go down to Kiambu Road and see whether it's as bad. Around the Petashi Global area, you find tenets of traffic on this Kiambu Road. It's not much of an ease this morning in comparison to the other times, but equally not as bad, especially as you come to get yourself into the city. And that is what it is that you expect on this very area, as you can evidently see. A different direction. Let's see, this is down to the city from this other side, and this is the roads around the Agoi Road, that is areas of Pangani, technically so much so of traffic if taking that direction. And there, if you can run away from the same, it would be helpful. Take an alternative route. Let's see what other road would require our attention for purposes of understanding this. Yes, Muranga Road is not so bad this morning. Around the Guru Nanak area, you find some tenets of traffic, and also around Shobi Plaza, technically not so good this morning. So if you're taking that direction, you expect some bit of a delay also trying to find yourself into the city. And on this side of Ngara, it's pretty much of an ease, as you can see, all clean down to Kirinyaga Road as well, not looking so bad. Let's see whether there's another direction that again would require for us to have a sneak preview of the same, so that we keep you up to tabs. This is around the Waiyaki area. And around the ABC area, you find that you find some tenets of traffic. If you're taking Waiyaki Way, definitely you'll get a bit of a delay, but it does not look all bad this morning. And from the ABC place area to the other sides of, let's say, James Gishuru. James Gishuru doesn't look so bad this morning. There's some pockets of traffic on different areas as you come down to Lavington and down to the Lavington Mall connecting to Ngong Road as well as Gitanga Road. You find some pockets of traffic as well on Gitanga Road, as you can evidently see. Most of the times you'll find tenets of traffic, but not looking so bad this morning, as well as Naivasha Road, not looking so bad this morning down to the Ngong Road. Let's look at how Ngong Road looks like this morning. Pretty much of an ease. Apart from these areas of the Junction Mall, you would get a bit of a delay, and these other bits of Ngong Road, you'd find some pockets of traffic on different parts of the Ngong Road, but it does not look as bad. So if you're taking Ngong Road, you definitely would expect to have some 5 minutes, 8 minutes delays. Valley Road on the other side, it does not look so bad, and down to Kenyatta Avenue as well, not looking so bad. And of course, definitely it's an ease with the Nairobi Expressway, somewhere around State House Road, all looking good. At this very point, the Arboretum, most of the times you'll find some tenets of traffic, not bad. Down again to Waiyaki and Nairobi Expressway, you find some tenets of traffic around this area that would give you a bit of a delay. Limuru Road is not as bad. Most of the times you'll not find so much of traffic around Limuru Road, as you can see all the way here as you come to connect to Muthaiga. That's where you'd get some pockets of traffic that would get you delayed. And on this side, this is Thika Road. Yes, as we have said, Thika Road is not so good this morning. Let's see whether on this other side, Ring Road, Ngara, not looking bad. Landis Road, also not looking bad. Jogoo Road, you will expect a bit of a delay if you are taking Jogoo Road to town. Look at it. It's not so rosy this morning on Jogoo Road. So if you can get an alternative route, I think it will be much of an ease for you. And on this other side, Rabbi Road, not looking bad. So Jogoo Road is the one that is a little bit notorious this morning. The Outer Ring Road as well has some tenets of traffic on these areas of Manyanja and other spaces. And so if you're taking the Outer Ring Road, definitely you'd expect a bit of a delay. Let's go down from Outer Ring Road briefly before we take a quick break, and then to Embakasi area, you definitely get some pockets of traffic that also will drop you down to Mombasa Road, spaces where you'd get traffic around Imara Daima, not so bad. Also connecting to the Nairobi Highway as well, some bits of traffic on this odds and ends area, some bits of traffic as you try to get yourself into the city. And therefore, if you're taking Mombasa Road, definitely you'd expect some bit of a delay. The Southern Bypass is clean as always, as you can evidently see. And on this other side, the Langata Road is not looking so bad. But when you come to this point where you're almost connecting to Mombasa Road, you would expect a bit of a delay around this roundabout area and these areas of Bunyala as well, some tenets of traffic as you find yourself into the city. That's what the roads look like this morning. Lots of different parts and also tenets of traffic, and therefore if you have to get to your destination early, it would be necessary that you step out at least minutes earlier than the stipulated time. Let's now take a quick short break from the roads, and we'll be coming back with the guests of the day. Don't go anywhere.
Usiyakubalie maumivu ya misuli kukatiza ratiba yako. Kaluma Pain Balm ni dawa ya kusugua iliyotengenezwa kutoka kwa miche maalum ili kutuliza maumivu ya misuli. Kaluma.
Disability is not only limited to physical disorder but also mental issue. From depression.
I was under depression for like 2 years.
Bipolar.
Bipolar disorder is mood disorder.
And even suicidal thoughts.
When I was just about to hang myself, a certain voice just talked to me, and I believe that was God. I tried suicide more than 6 times.
Beyond the Limit has gone beyond its limit to find answers so as to help everyone go through life with ease. Join Muthoni Maina every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Starting this September at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, The Realtor brings it all to perspective. we identify a property, discuss and demonstrate the journey towards ownership.
Professionals who have integrity, and from their catalog you can easily read that these are professionals who are able to deliver.
Everywhere you go, you have to up your games, you have to go with the trends.
Not forgetting the margins as well as the risks that come along.
The runaway prices of the land. We are saying that it's something that we can never go without mentioning. Any developer will not go without mentioning the price of land.
Don't miss out. Do you want the latest news on farming? We've got the WikiLeaks for you. Get it? No? Well, okay. Every week, we give you insights on different farms, from crop farming to animal keeping.
They're very hardy insects, yeah? The larvae is a very hardy insect.
We look forward to having an optimum production in maybe about 5 years. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we plant every week and we harvest every week.
Join Violet Njoki every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. as we skooma the wiki.
It's not all the time you have to read your farm. Sometimes it's of benefit.
Starting this September at 8:30 p.m.
Hi and welcome to The Grind. My name is Violet Njoki.
We continue to provide the platform that aims to inform and educate on business-related matter. We are here to ask all the relevant questions on your behalf.
When it comes to a catering business, do you need licenses?
Yeah, a lot of it.
And inform you what is happening in the business arena. Be sure to stay tuned.
All week, you look forward to the weekend. And we are here to help you make the most of it. Catch me, Karen Karini, on Fridays. And with me, Muthoni Maina, on the weekend.
Disability is not only limited to physical disorder, but also mental issue. From depression,
I was under depression for like 2 years.
Bipolar.
Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder.
And even suicidal
to us
thoughts.
to make sure that we shine and also capture these spaces to bring out the best. For the longest of time, we have been talking about incorporate the youth, incorporate the young turks, incorporate the women, persons with disability. And true to it, with the 2010 Constitution, we have seen these spaces opening towards these ones that would be considered to be vulnerable in society. But even as the spaces are opened, those ones that get to, enjoy the space on the table, just how much are they doing towards according proper representation of the special groups? Definitely what we'll be talking about, as well as we take a look at this, state of the nation. Very, very important that we delve much into these conversations. In studio with me is Anita Nkirote joins us this morning, as well as Josephat Kamanya. These ones are real politicians, and in their own spaces have done so much so towards making sure that the voices of the young turks are heard at this space of politics. And so as we get into this conversation, briefly take a look at what then we're likely to get as the young turks. And I say we because we almost fall in that very group. And of course, that includes me. But hugely, of course, the conversation is about them. But generally also taking a look at the Kenya Kwanza government, one that our very own Kamanya advocated for hugely. But we also want to understand just how best then Anita would say. Anita was Team Azimio 101%. I don't know whether that has changed. I hear there's some bit of infighting therein. What do you make of that?
I think it's when you throw food to chickens and they start running around. So there's a lot of fight in leadership, as you can see clearly, with the likes of John Mbadi complaining about
the position.
Yes.
Are you even majority or minority? Because you see, that again is another confusion. Before even John Mbadi begins to complain, he was minority leader back then.
Yes.
But still, at this very point, we don't even know whether you're majority or minority.
Yeah. It becomes complicated because of the Azimio coalition and how it's considered as a political party.
Right.
Already we saw the wild beast migration, whereby people went to see the DP and are pledging alliance. But if you look at how it went at the COG, the writing, the script is on the wall. If 44 against 3, and yet Azimio had very many governors, the writing is on the wall, and you cannot compel people to vote. You can lobby, you can only whip them, but you cannot force them.
Right.
Yes.
What does that speak, Kamanya? First of all, as we talk about Azimio, then we get to the Young Turks, and most importantly, the Kenya Kwanza government.
Well, morning viewers, and, it's getting interesting because now is when we are getting into the formation of the government structures.
Yeah.
And hence you see all the interest in wanting to know who has a majority, who is going to control the house. Because if you have, if you have the presidency, you would want to have the National Assembly on your side.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes to even the COG, because you have an agenda to deliver to the people. And remember, and we spoke about this in the build-up towards the election.
Right.
When the coalitions move came, people started questioning why was there a pre and a post coalition that one would form. And hence, even though most of the coalitions were registered, well, the two of them were registered with the ORPP, it was not very clear how it was going to play out. And everybody was anticipating that the numbers would favor them after forming the coalition, that you'd be able to have a whooping win when it comes to the presidency and the National Assembly and even all to the Senate. But as we have it today, it was a very close tie. Standalone parties, UDA has majority.
Yeah.
When you look at the coalition,
definitely it is Azimio. So,
yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've had the people from the Azimio side.
Yeah.
Once our president was, William Ruto was sworn in, what she's referring to as the wildebeest migration.
Migration, you know.
We saw members of parliament pledging their allegiance to the president.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to be in government, everybody wants to deliver. Remember, after election, somehow the party sensitivity goes down.
Right.
You want to deliver the mandate you are given by your people. But also, again, you have your allegiance to the party that brought you into the office. So
Yes.
there is a thin balance. And I think in time, the speaker, Papa Aroma,
Yes, in Solomonic wisdom, which we expect,
Yes.
perhaps Marende would have done better on this one, but I don't know.
Let's see. The speaker is going to pronounce himself on the matter,
Yeah.
and then he'll advise us who has the majority. If it is us, then of course the Kimani Ichung'wah will be the majority leader. And we saw the Kenya Kwanza, we took the COG chairmanship and all that.
Right.
But what we are calling for, and I like some of the tones that were coming from the Azimio member of parliament meeting, that they are saying they want to work with the government, even though on the opposition side, because we have to make sure that this country moves away from politics. We don't get stuck. The campaigns are over.
But just how genuine are these, Kamanya? I mean, these individuals, first of all, as a member of parliament, my understanding is that you really do not need that hand of the executive, to be honest, to perform your duties. We're talking about oversight and legislation, and we're also talking about representation at the level of parliament. Just how much do you need to have the government or the executive on your side for you to perform your duties? I'd want to assume that if a matter is presented, at the floor, definitely you look into this matter. Does it then benefit the common mwananchi, which is your sole mandate as a member of parliament? Then, if it's in favor of, or if the executive is in favor of this bill that is, being discussed, whether you're on this side or not, nothing stops you from saying, you know what, I'll put my signature on this and say, let it proceed, or say no, based on how you want to look at this matter. So why does it have to be a question of shifting allegiance or appearing as though you're selling the agenda of this or that party?
I wish we had more of Okia Omtata kind.
Yes.
Because that's the kind of leader. I admire the fellow. When the Azimio fraternity walked out and decided they were not going to vote, he said he was going to stay. Right. Because that is what is right for the country for the people, and people need to make stands devoid of their political party affiliation. I do agree with you. We need to walk away from this sort of puppeteering, whereby if a party leader says this, that is what needs to happen. We need to talk about the interest of the people. We need to have bills and motions, and the agenda has to be about service delivery, about public policy to us as Kenyans. That much I agree. We need to have now our politics mature to politics of ideas. We need a paradigm shift.
Right.
I agree. So that we can see at the floor of the House, members from more, you have independent members,
Yes.
why do they feel the need to affiliate with a certain party? Immediately after being sworn in.
Right.
They should just stay in their place and position and support the agenda or whatever is in the House if it benefits the constituents.
Right.
They take allegiance and oath of office to the Constitution and the people of Kenya, not the party. There is nowhere during the swearing in you'll hear a member saying, I being a UDA member, I being a ODM member, I being a KANU member. No, it ceases the moment you are elected because you're there to serve the country. And this is the kind of leadership we need to have.
Right.
And if you look at most of the young Turks now, young people who are coming up, us who are trying to still be in this space of leadership and politics, this is what we're trying to say, that it is about time we overlook all the social limitations, all the political gimmicks that are stagnating the developmental agenda of our nation. And if we can have more young people coming up, us will be able to disagree and agree in principle.
Oh, how I believe and hope that that would be the case.
Is, yeah.
But anyway, Anita, look at the Constitution and, as the argument would direct us and as we seek advisory, it supersedes every other law or any other law in the land. And so in this world-based migration, as we'd want to call it, it appears that there's that freedom of association that is incorporated in the Constitution. And therefore, these members of parliament or these legislators are also using this as, their way to justify the reason why then they can perhaps appear to sell the agenda of the main party or of the party in government today. And even worse is to look at this conversation of majority and minority, that somewhere along the reign, somewhere along the 5 years, you could see this shift of allegiance. And therefore, then we need to make adjustments on the minority and the majority parties. What does it speak? Do you suppose the Constitution envisioned such a crisis? And would it get us to a point where we have a constitutional crisis again?
From where I look at it, no, we will not have a constitutional crisis, because when I look at the Constitution, I see it as a football match. I don't know if you're prior to the rules of the game. And in a football match, nowadays, you've seen them do like this when a goal comes. They do like this, and we analyze and we go back.
Right.
And for me, and even when you look at the Supreme Court petition, there are very many angles. When you're playing at this side, what does it mean? What are the rules? Can we look at it? What are the precedents? How can we make decisions? So as I look at it, that's anything is subject to interpretation, because it's not science as science.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, and when you mentioned about the wild-beast migration and the roles of MPs, and this is one of the reasons why members of parliament yesterday were discussing with SRC, and that's why SRC is seeing a need to reduce the perks of being a member of parliament, because as you mentioned earlier, it's a representation, oversight, and representation. Now, when you're asking a member of parliament, he's a representative of the people, and he has to lobby. Look, just remember that only 15% goes to devolution, which means that 85% is with the executive. Yes, you've given him CDF, which is under contestation at maybe about 100 million per constituency. But this same guy, you're asking him, he still has to lobby for 85%. How is he going to lobby for that when he's in the opposition? There are constituency roads. He still has to go, a serious member of parliament, I'd assume. It still had to go to the CS maybe for roads, if it's health, whatever falls under your mandate, whatever is not necessarily devolved. So that's how the cat and mouse game goes. Unless you want to say that legislatures will stick directly to only representation and legislation, and then now you remove the whole burden of oversight and what they're delivering to the constituencies, you give them no other choice but to walk the talk with the executive.
Okay.
However, when I look at ODM, which according to me is the strongest political party, I don't know what you'll have to say in
Kamanya
terms
would
of...
talk otherwise because of the numbers. You see, what is the determinant factor sometimes, I mean, overlook the years that the party has been in existence, but generally it's representation in the House.
Yes.
And so in this case, then UDA has come force fire, barely 6 months or even 7 or a year, and successfully managed a majority. That is in terms of individual parties at the level of the House.
But we've also known the party that the presidency does not last for more than 10 years.
Well, of course,
but we shall see.
We shall see.
We shall see. So for me, ODM being the strongest political parties, for me, I'd advise the legislatures to play the opposition, to take their rightful side. At least Sabina, it seems like Sabina has already gotten the memo, and she's already playing her role in the opposition side, because we cannot all be yes men. The point of a democracy is so that we can have different opinions. Otherwise, we would have done other things. So for me, I expect if you're in the opposition, just play your part, act right, and it will be a good time, even as a young tack. The young members of parliament who are under 35, come out strongly, defend your party position, look at bills objectively, and you will have your space and your time will come.
All right. Let's talk about the members of parliament now that you mentioned something to do with the GCDF, or the CDF, so to speak. Well, the courts speak this, and the other side, we're also talking about allowances that were slashed by the SRC.
Yes.
But as of yesterday, 3 hours in one room, closed in there, tight conversations, heavy conversations, push and pull, and then eventually, I don't know whether I'd say the members of parliament successfully managed to arm twist the SRC from what it is that people have been saying previously. And then SRC then, of course, rethinks its position as to the allowances on that. I mean, we have seen, or we have witnessed the induction process of members of parliament in Safari Park, and we're expecting them to come back to the House, the 13th parliament, to perform, to work. Others under the working government or the current government, others are different, of course, and all this shifting of allegiance and all that. What to expect from the members of parliament, and why this so much so push for the allowances, for the car grants, for the NG-CDF?
Well, I think we're still waiting for the SRC to pronounce, to give a statement.
Yes, to give a statement.
As guided by the Senate. We cannot preempt.
Yes.
But I think we are almost certain that that there will be changes from what they had agreed upon about slashing.
Right.
Possibly the allowances and all the grants and the other packs will come back. But I think the unfortunate bit is that all the MPs, whenever the issue of SRC and taxation and slashing of their packs comes up, they come together. It doesn't matter which political party they come from.
Yes.
How I wish all the other bills will be approached with much zeal by the same members of parliament. This House, we are really hopeful as a nation and hoping that there are people who will be able to overlook their own personal gains, because again, at the expense of the common mwananchi, the MPs continue to thrive with hefty rewards and perks. And why you see, that's why you're seeing all this, the migration and people leaving their parties, even at the peril of being disqualified, because you can be called back if you abandon your party.
That's true.
I hope they do realize that,
The dangers that come along with, abandoning your party. And I don't know why parties are going soft on them.
They need to be firm, because that's the only way we can strengthen our constitution.
That's true.
There are no gaps in our constitution when it comes to when it comes to devolution, when it comes to running of the houses, the various houses, the Senate, the National Assembly. There are no gaps. There are no power gaps. We have no shortage of legislation. Implementation is the issue. Even these MPs, the way we're having them now, if only they can assume their respective party positions, this House can do a lot of good to our country. My worry is we have a lot of sort of new entrants in terms of MPs who have come in under this dispensation and then from different parties. So they are so much looking forward to their party leadership. And we all know that party leadership is not necessarily new to the paradigm shift that you are looking for as a nation. So they're still enshrining those old ways of doing people, or whipping people, and trying to twist members. If you do this, we take this away from you. If you do this, then we reward you. If you do this, we promote you at the party level. I'm really hoping that we can have structures. I agree with her when she talks about ODM. It is not the strongest party, but it is the oldest party.
Yeah.
It is the one party that has.
Perhaps not the oldest, but at least that one that appears to be formidable enough.
Away from KANU, because you see, KANU doesn't have numbers.
Ford Kenya as well.
But ODM has a lot of numbers compared to all the others. I mean, apart from now, our UDA.
Right.
But ODM, we have to give it to them. They have a structure. Whether it is very effective or not, but compared to most of the other parties, apart from UDA, ODM has a better structure. If only they can continue growing that party. As we grow our own party, UDA, then I will see a situation whereby in the near future, maybe 2027, parties will be stronger. There will be more structure within the party. The members of parliament that will make it to the next house, hoping this house delivers, because we cannot keep on selling hope, saying the next house, the next house. We need to pin this one down to a point whereby service delivery is not an option for them, but a mandate they must execute.
Would it be necessary for the other side, and that is the Kenya Kwanza government, to say no to these ones that appear? And you know, categorically, the president says that, well, I am open to us having coffee, but I am not going to entertain any form of a handshake. Would it be wise or necessary for him to tell them, you know, hold it in that other side? We'll still work together, but can you just sell the agenda of your parties?
I think he has.
And is that also a way of stifling democracy? Because I mean, if, as a member of parliament, you decide that you want to shift allegiance, I think again, it is your right to as well proceed and choose a party and proceed to that other side. I
think he has pronounced the same in a different word.
Yes.
In a different way.
But why is it that he warms up to these ones that shift gears to these other sides?
No, he already told them, we want you to keep the government in check. When he said that, to my understanding, he was not only referring to the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. He was saying, you guys are in opposition. And that's why even he has said, he's gone further to say that we are not going to have any CS or PS from the opposition. We are not going to get any appointment. Because he wants to be kept in check. There has to be an exchequer. And if you look into our plan, the manifesto, he talked about institutionalization and constitutionalism.
Yes.
So if you're in opposition, play your part. If you have institutions that are independent, that are meant to help the government run the agenda of the day, let the people deliver. You don't have to be a president's friend for you to do your job.
Sure.
And you differing with a president, and I'm hoping we'll be able to see this for the first time in our country, will not mean that now you have to be reprimanded. If you're doing your job, we have the CJ, we have other independent institutions. If you're doing your work, protecting the people, because they just said that the Constitution is supreme, you know, then your mandate, if it calls upon you to call out the government of the day, then you should just be left to do your work.
The government.
So I'm really hoping that we can have that shift. Again, we have a lot of young people.
Right.
Whoever mentors them politically will influence the kind of leadership you're going to have in the house. Will influence the kind of contributions you're going to have in the house. We have already seen, especially in the Azimio front, like now the senior member, James Bandi, saying he has to be the leader of the party in the floor of the house. But the other people are dissenting from that opinion and saying, no.
You and I, one's a difference.
He's a young guy, he's an elected member. This guy is only a nominated, especially elected member we refer to as a nominated member. So that's what I was saying, that the stifling of new leaders is what affects the output or the input they can have in the house. But if they can just be allowed, if they need to call it to a vote, why do they have to say, and this is why I pity the Azimio front, that we have candidates, whoever BAMBA chooses will become our leader. I think that's very unfortunate. We have a democracy.
Yes.
And it should cut across. The people, the members, much as that is their own business to handle, they should be left to vote and pick the person they feel will best represent them as the minority leader.
Okay, we're still talking about the possibility
or majority leader.
Or majority leader, because at this point we do not know. And one of the papers speak of how Raila calls ODM crisis meeting. I don't know how much of a crisis sits there in ODM before it even goes further to Azimio One Kenya Alliance. And the biggest question then would be, just what are the chances that ODM will survive, and how much of young tucks do we have there that are formidable and strong enough to steer the party forward in the absence of BABA? And we're not trying to say that BABA is absent. I mean, there's still more time for him. But if it has to hold for the next 10, 20 years, then we really have to have young turks that are formidable enough, or the brains that are formidable enough to steer it forward. So allow us to take a short break, and then we come back to that as we also get to understand the young ones that are in ODM and how they are being nurtured after this break.
You are watching TV 47, the home of untold stories.
Hey!
Disability is not only limited to physical disorder, but also mental issue. From depression,
I was under depression for like 2 years.
bipolar,
Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder.
and even suicidal thoughts.
When I was just about to hang myself, a certain voice just talked to me, and I believe that was God. I tried suicide more than 6 times.
Beyond the Limit has gone beyond its limit to find answers so as to help everyone go through life with ease. Join Muthoni Maina every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Starting this September at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, The Realtor brings it all to perspective. We identify a property, discuss and demonstrate the journey towards ownership.
Professionals who have integrity, and from their catalog you can easily read that these are professionals who are able to deliver.
Everywhere you go, you have to up your games. You have to go with the trends.
Not forgetting the margins as well as the risks that come along.
The runaway prices of the land. We are saying that it's something that we can never go without mentioning. Any developer will not go without mentioning the price of land.
Don't miss out. Do you want the latest news on farming? We've got the WikiLeaks for you. Get it? No? Well, okay. Every week, we give you insights on different farms, from crop farming to animal keeping.
They're very hardy insects, yeah? The larvae is a very hardy insect.
We look forward to having an optimum production in maybe about 5 years. Yes. Yeah.
So we plant every week and we harvest every week.
Join Violet Njoki every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. as we skooma the wiki.
It's not all the time you have to read your farm. Sometimes it's of benefit.
Starting this September at 8:30 p.m.
This while we talk about the Chama cha Kazi, those ones in Tanzania, and how they have managed to sustain. Ours, KANU, has not done so well in terms of, existence, and while it is there, while Ford Kenya is there, not as strong as we would have expected. Today, if you go to South Africa, perhaps you'd get its ANC that has the highest representation. And we ask ourselves, just where did we get it wrong? Does it boil down to those ones that are at the top of the helm in these parties and how they nurture the young turks that then come up to make sure that they have roots for the party, strong even in times when they're not there?
For me, when I look at political party politics, I look at it in terms of there's a lot of heavy patronage in Kenyan politics. Who you know, how you know. Like somebody can come today and this guy would be like, but I've been here longer. I've 47 counties. This guy just came like 2-3 months in and he's already gotten A, B, C, D. But then it goes on to deeper. What is the value you're offering as a party? When young men engage with political parties, most of them, first of all, engage in the wings, youth wing, women wing, and try, at least for ZANU-PF and even ODM to some extent, because you cannot contain very many young, and even the Hustlers movement, it had a very strong youth wing, because you cannot contain all these people to fight for their space. Now, for me, the argument is your only qualification cannot also to be young. While you're fighting for the young tax space, you also have to bring something to the table. You have to come and say, this is my professional experience and this is what I can give the party. I am a policy expert. And we saw it with you, with Gloria.
Gloria Roba, yes.
Yes,
she was policy analyst.
She vied, she didn't get, she didn't
at the
get
primary, she didn't make it.
Yes. And then, but she was able to negotiate and say, hey, you know what, this is what I can offer the party. And I have no doubt she'll be a very credible legislature. So it's about also finding out what's your SWOT. What can you actually offer to the party? It cannot be, okay, now I'm in the young youth wing. It's just like being a nominated senator or being in the National Assembly and you're like just chilled out. Now nimefika, I'm nominated. You have to bring the issues that made you. You must have issue-based politics. The issue that got you nominated. What am I speaking for? If it's persons with disability, what do they need? If I am speaking for women, what do women need? And you raise up bills that support the same. You put up petitions that support the same. It's not a fun space. Yes. So for me, the patronage, and you talked about Ford Kenya, what made KANU fall? Same things, a lot of heavy patronage. Number two, you must be alive to the times. And I remember during our side chats just now, I said, like UDA, will it stand
the test of time?
For 10 years? Because as it's been, it's usually a vehicle for you to get, like Jubilee.
Yes,
it's a vehicle for you to get into what are we taking our political parties for? A vehicle for you to step into the next leadership, and that's why when I say ODM is the strongest political parties, not even in terms of numbers, I'm talking about structures. But the most determining time, as we are transitioning also into government, ODM will have I'd say challenges, and that's why they're having meetings of transitioning, because clearly there must be a transition in leadership. I've seen Joho trying to take up, Junet took up really strong leadership roles. And I'm seeing Mbadi, and you know when Mbadi is contesting, he's contesting on the basis of Kwachama, he's one of the most senior members. He's actually, I don't know, I'm not sure if he's the chairman.
He was the chair.
He was the chairman.
Even at the,
So in terms of hierarchy from the party side, yes, he's strong. While you argue that he may be nominated, it's also the party that asked him not to vie.
To vie, yes.
And he must have credible reason. If I vied, I would have still been an elected leader of parliament. So when the party gave me the direction to step down, gave me the nomination slot, you cannot now come to tell me during the house leadership that
you're not going to get there.
Yes. So I think ODM needs to put his house in order. It must also have an opposition agenda. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes because I was in Azimio, one of the biggest mistakes Azimio did, it never imagined it could lose elections because it believes all the stakes were with them. But now it's time to put the house in order, have ODM meet, have now the whole Azimio One Kenya coalition meet and decide what is also our agenda. How are we going to put checks and balances? It's time to smell the coffee.
It is time to smell the coffee. And briefly on the Kenya Kwanza government and the chances of them holding for the next 5 years. Pretty much of a dicey situation. As of course Anita would say, most of the times these are vehicles to take you to the next level. And now that you are in government, sometimes people tend to overlook, the support they have received. Sometimes this is the moments where you remind the likes of those ones or the leaders who came with the earthquake that you really did not deliver the 70%. As we would have expected. This is the time to reward loyalty. This is the time for someone to show their might. Just what are the chances that these very individuals, the same monkeys, are going to hold these parties together for the next 5 years?
One thing we have to understand is that politics is about control of power, which influences resource distribution. And hence, it goes hand in hand with development. And no wonder people are being told, like you're talking about the handshake. If you deliver 75% of your votes from your bloc, we could give you this portion of the government. And now we have to have a reality check and see, so how are we doing, where are we, and how do we move forward? The good thing is that with our Kenya Kwanza, leadership, it has been very consultative. So we are still trusting that it's going to be, to remain the same.
Yeah.
Standing the test of time, we have faith and hope, because I have faith in my party leader. So far he has exhibited quite marvelous skills in terms of negotiating and bringing people together and forming a collective bargain. If we can stick to our word, if we can honor our commitment, if we can stick to the plan, to the Kenyans and also to the other leaders that we have on board and others who are going to come up.
But you have to remember that from the onset, your leader really wasn't even for this coalition conversation.
Yes.
Because it felt like, well, the party was strong enough to have managed by itself. But then you also get to a space where you realize that as a people, we have come to levels where it's hard for one to get to win the presidency.
Yes, single-handedly.
Single-handedly. And so, I mean, don't you think it's going to change tone?
That's what I'm saying. You know, nothing is static. We have to agree. You know, we are living in a very sort of volatile times. You know, you have to go with the flow and see what works best at specific times. We cannot say that, okay, this is what we agreed on, we're going to stick to that. We may end up shooting ourselves down. So I want to trust in the wisdom of our party leader that when the time is right, he will be flexible enough to help himself and the party and the nation move forward. Because remember, a few years ago, we got stuck in a political moment when the president and the deputy president fell off, because they could not agree on who will take over come 2022, where we are now. We don't want that situation that a year into Kenya Kwanza leadership, or 2 years, now there is a rift and people are already now starting to deliberate on 2027. That is going to stifle our development agenda, and we do not want that. So I want to believe, let's give it time. You know, it's only a few weeks anyway, and I'm sure there are going to be challenges. It's not going to be smooth. It's not going to be easy, but I just want to trust that the party leadership will find it fit to be accommodative, and just remember that we took over government so we can deliver to the people. But most importantly, Linda, you mentioned the likes of our friends from the South, the ANC, the South African Party, the EFF, the ZANU and all those. Even the chama cha Mashinani, chama cha Mapinduzi.
Mashinani is
Kenyan.
Ruto
CCM is chama cha Mapinduzi.
Yes. If you look at these parties, yes, much as they have been having the leadership for the longest, there are also parties that took over from the colonial government, and the systems have remained the same. They have sustained one of the goals, or actually the number one goal of the Sustainable Development Goals, is to eradicate poverty. But these parties have sustained poverty in their own respective countries over time.
Unfortunately.
So we do need a transition. From that kind of leadership to new, you know, we need to have a new Pan-African perception. And this is what, and we're going to talk about it, what the president was trying to allude to when he was talking about, when he was delivering his speech. Because we cannot have new leadership based on old ideologies that does not favor our current circumstances. There has to be a transition. One, the transition has to be in person. These old leaders have to be willing to be led by us, young people. Let us assume our space as young people, not by the virtue of age, but also by virtue of skills. We show up, we assume our space, and we also show them how things can be done in a modern way. We don't have to have systems that are not serving our purpose as a nation, as a continent, even as a world. Things have to change. So young people have to rise up, assume political party leadership, assume our social status accordingly, and that's the only way we can transform. We cannot rely on politics.
Well put. No. You know, overlook, and Kenyans will always be Kenyans, so overlook the body language, overlook the positioning, or overlook the tempo, overlook everything about, you know, what the president delivered in form of a speech and, you know, how he did it. But just look at the substance of the speech. A couple of matters that he raises, including this ones that you speak of, that, you know, we cannot be doing the same thing every other time and expecting different results. We cannot be having these parties that we claim to be very formidable, yet they do not bring that change to the people. He alludes to the question of the economy, and I mean, he also speaks hugely about the bottom-up approach, you know, trying to explain how then this resonates with the hustler, and, you know, equally speaks volume about the environment and, you know, a couple of matters that really need to be addressed. Quite a speech, so to speak, and a maiden one in the United Nations General Assembly, the 77th one. What do you make of it, and what are the chances then that we can pick from what it is that he speaks to the world and believe that this is what he's going to do at home in terms of spearheading that change that he speaks to?
Credit must be given. That was a very beautiful written speech. Congratulations to Eric Ngeno for doing a good job. Yes, that's an awesome speech writer. For me, when I look at the issues, there's COP27 coming up in Egypt. So the world is all about climate change. For me, the conversations might be in Egypt, but it is Kenya that will steal the show. And this is just the beginning. When it comes to foreign affairs, a very big heads up to whoever is doing the job in the presidential team. But Kenya has anyway always had a very good astute foreign affairs policy. And what I'm looking at it, as he spoke to the hustler, I saw the language. It makes me look at the relationship between Kenya and the USA. Because Biden had alluded to the same. He's also giving the whole hustler, let's put the hustler on this scale, and let's listen to what the Wanjiko, ordinary Mwananchi, is bringing to the table. So for me, what I'm looking at politics may be local, but money is international. And we are playing that game. So kudos to our president. The only worry I have is number one, foreign travel. Already where I'm seated. And for me, that's why I was rooting for Azimio party leader. I feel like old presidents don't travel much, maybe for medical attention. If you look at Kibaki's regime, he used
not much of travel,
Not much of travel. If you look at even Museveni, even our neighbors, when you look at Museveni, he had no time to go to the UK or to the USA. He had no qualms like that. But now for young presidents, they want to travel everywhere. They want to see everything. So I admire, of course, it was Zunga, but I'm asking, was it necessary he goes to the UK?
Was it not necessary? Perhaps we should start.
You saw the whole bus.
And you remember the deputy president speaking to this and saying that, we really sat down and questioned ourselves and asked, should we allow him to go? Should he kept on asking. And then eventually he termed it necessary. In his own wisdom, he said, perhaps this would be necessary for me to have gone there. And we understand the caliber of William Ruto, and especially when it comes to the question of politics. And I mean, this talks, even as deputy president, he's not been traveling as much to levels where we all thought that maybe there are places he cannot go to, and this was propagated. And therefore, don't you think there must have been great thought that could have driven him to have traveled?
Linda, the way I look at it, if I go to Gigiri and go to the US embassy, I'm in US soil. He could have gone to James Marriott's office, signed, look at that book, signed.
Eulogy.
And it could have been as good as being in the UK, only using less taxpayers' money. So for me, for Unga, of course, that was automatic, we had to go. But UK, for me, going forward, and if you have people, I would advise that you start looking into, because you cannot tell us you only have 93 million in the treasury.
And then you proceed to travel.
And then you're proceeding. Not even to mention, between now and November when we're having COP, African countries are meeting left, right, and center. It's Addis Ababa, it's Senegal, it's Cote d'Ivoire, because we must have a common language on. The theme will only be climate financing. That's what African will be talking about. So between now and then, and Kenya is a big boy in the African space. And that's one of the things we will be negotiating. So for me, and then I'm also looking at, you mentioned young tax. The president is surrounded by very young people, the likes of Ndindi Nyoro, the likes of Kimani Ichung'wah, and even during his swearing in, you could see who is hanging out with Aliko Dangote, who is doing ABCD and laying out the structures. So for me, I'd be keen, not just even on him. And that's why we love old presidents, because they don't want to travel.
I don't know what you make of that. And I mean, they don't want to travel. While you want to look at it, as just some mere argument, there could be some substance in that.
But Linda, sincerely speaking, the bar cannot be set that low. That we must have an old president.
So that they
not the agility of a young president gives him a lot of zeal and energy to exploit opportunities. Remember, and she says very well that Kenya is a big boy in Africa. We are the hub of Africa. So our international relations policy has to be growing day in, day out, regardless of the presidency, because that's the only way we're able to sustain our developmental agenda. The president going to the UK, fine. There is much I did not want to talk about, the passing of the Queen, not about the travel, not the passing of the Queen, because that's a whole different story, and as Africans, everybody has their own personal input. But you see, the president may have been of a different opinion as an individual, but now he has to act in the office of the presidency. And we have to understand that some international relations that we are still subscribing to, some statutes that we're still subscribing to, we cannot overlook, much as you may not agree to it as an individual. So him going was not necessarily a personal choice, but more of a presidential choice because of what Kenya as a country, as a state, subscribes to. In future, that may change. So we have to accept some of these things and be realistic and keep some politics away from it, and let's focus on what is good for the nation. Well, as for old president, I still don't subscribe to that. We cannot be talking about a young...
Well, that is neither here or there, but you cannot be talking about youngsters and then again, you're also advocating for this other one. I mean, I think bottom line is that we just need a president that is good enough for the nation, whether young or old.
But better yet, young, because the young are the majority. How beautiful would it be, Linda, to have a 40-year-old president?
If they deliver, it will be...
If they are able to deliver.
Yes, if they
look at the inspiration they bring to the youth and the generation of the day. Today, and it's best to be very factual, look at our neighbors in Uganda. Bobi Wine is a young, aspiring presidential candidate, but the guy is detained in his own house, he's beaten, he's manhandled.
But what kind of approach again should we have to bring this? Because there is a lot of intolerance that is propagated by the young turks as they want to dominate these spaces, as they want to take these spaces. And we also understand that, I mean, these ones that are old started when they were young. So astute politicians, for that matter, they understand the game pretty well. What makes the young ones assume that you can just come and capture and manage and dominate just like that? And I mean, when we talk about Bobby Young, we also cross over to Zimbabwe. We talk about the chamisas of this day. And it reminds you that perhaps they have not been very successful because of the radical approach.
Thank you.
I do agree.
Thank you so much.
The approach makes the difference. But again, what is the option? The so-called old people, they're not willing to mentor and bring these young Turks on board. So you find people agitating for their space. Remember, even the freedom that we have as African nations did not come. If we had waited for the white old men to die so that we can take over, trust you me, we still be colonies today. So at some point, for there to be peace, there has to be war.
There has to be war. You might need to remember that Museveni went through that war for him to be where it is that he is. Therefore has proper understanding of this whole radical approach to matters. If really war is the way to get him out of there, are we going to be successful in getting the young Turks, in getting a 40-year-old president comfortably and confidently? And sometimes we talk about maturity in the space of politics. Are they as mature to manage and to dominate and to take up these positions?
I don't know what he has against old people, but in the words of Jomo Kenyatta, the pen is mightier than the sword. And if you looked at the speech by DP, who I believe is one of the youngest actually presidents in Africa, if you look at the speech, there's a way he alluded to colonialism in a very intelligent way. He said the last time Africa was in the agenda, in the international agenda of multilateralism, is in 1884 to 1885. And if you're a student of politics, you know damn well that's when it was the scramble and petition of Africa. That's Exhibit A. When you look at Exhibit B and how Malema approaches issues as a young person, Malema, Chamisa from Zimbabwe. And there's also one, Malema, Chamisa, there's also another one I'm forgetting. How they approach issues. And you can just see, you mentioned Uganda, you can see why Besigye had to exit. And now you're seeing for Bobby Wine to even push through, he needs a lot of heart and spirit into it. So for us in Kenya, I look at one, at least we have the advantage of democracy. Two, there is a way of doing things in a better way other than wielding a gun. You do not have to respond to a mosquito with a hammer. I mean, we have to be smarter at doing things. Yes, it's the young people who call for radicalism, but as you can remember, even with the church, when we are looking for multi-party democracy, we had very strong local church leaders, the likes of Joya. They had a different approach. They were not, let me use quote unquote, violent, as you say. They would preach in churches, maybe organize peaceful demonstrations.
But also it did not work for the Njoyas of today. I have spoken to Timothy Njoya a couple of times, and he'll tell you, if there's a person who loves and hates the country in equal measures, should be this man, because of the radicalization also that was faced, in as much as perhaps he tried this noble ways of trying to push for democracy, trying to make sure that as well the church is incorporated in this space for us to have a better Kenya. And therefore, I don't know whether there's a better approach that one can take for them to successfully manage to get another step in terms of democracy growth.
You see, war is not about taking up guns and
that's also one thing,
going to the street. No, you see, we are in a modern society. When you talk about war, you know, or fighting in the political space nowadays, we're talking about ideologies, we're talking about movements, we're talking about mobilization, we're talking about unity of purpose. As young people, we have the numbers. Ask yourself, why is it we are not able to come together and form a political party? Why is it we are not able to come together and front a presidential candidate? But every political party in the world has a youth wing, you know, has lobby groups made of young people. She was in Azimio. She knows that. Everybody knows that in the world. So what I'm saying, when I talk about what I'm saying, we have to start saying no to what is not working for us. Remember, a greater population of the world, not just Kenya, is the unemployed yet qualified youth. Is the underpaid yet highly skilled youth. Is people who have no access to resources, but they have a lot of innovation and skills and ideas, who can bring vibrance to the economies of this world. And that's the point I'm saying. We have to start rising up and saying no. The reason you see some of us vying for this position is not for any other purpose. It's to show even that young person from the village or from anywhere, whoever is watching, even our international viewers, that you don't need to be coming from a certain lineage or town or city or monarch or no. You just have to have an idea, front it with your people. If they buy into it, you guys move the agenda of the day. If they don't, you will have inspired or you have a good story to talk about it. So we have to rise up. The uprising that we need now as Kenya, as a country, as Africa, as a continent, is about unity of purpose. And what the president was talking about, he was trying to say we need to say no to the colonial inheritance that we've had in terms of systems. We need to revisit and see what works for us. We need to walk away from aid and think about development and investment, because we've been given a lot of aid over time, which if you look at the World Bank, the IMF, remember they would give us these conditional grants. And some of the problems they were trying to help us solve, they were merely sustaining what you'd call like it was a scheme. You have a 5-year program, you're funded to run a food relief program. But why not invest in irrigation? We have land, you know, why can we not find other mechanisms where you don't have to rely on the rainfall? Number two, you look at South Africa today, and that's why I'm very grateful for where we are as a country in terms of, as Kenya, as a country. South Africa today, they're experiencing what we call load shedding. Lights go out from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. almost every day in different provinces. Because, and remember, this is the first African country to have electricity. Kenya is the second one in the world, in Africa. The systems they have there, you have ANC. These guys have greater grid, power grid, than we do as a country. But they are not able to sustain power supply. Why? Because of poor leadership. As a world, we are in what you're calling the fourth industrial revolution. We cannot be talking about hunger and famine and poverty and poor health. And now we are debating about CBC, do we scrap it off or not? When the world is talking about quality education. Us, access to education is an issue. So we have to look, the reason I'm bringing all this up is because you have to look at how do we relate with all these international agencies and other states that are willing to come here to Kenya for partnerships that will benefit us. We just don't want them to help them run their budget and programs and have them approved on their end, but when it gets here, there is misappropriation of funds. We do not realize the interest of our people, and yet time is passing by.
Well, interesting. Allow us to take a quick short break, and we come back, expound further on that also, look at the possible of having young tax represented at the level of the cabinet. And I mean, we are all waiting with bated breath to see what the cabinet will look like. So we take a short break and then we come back with that.
The home of untold stories. Sona moja imetengenezwa kwa njia spesheli ili kupambana na
Disability is not only limited to physical disorder but also mental issue. From depression,
I was under depression for like 2 years.
Bipolar.
Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder.
And even suicidal thoughts.
When I was just about to hang myself, a certain voice just talked to me, and I believe that was God. I tried suicide more than 6 times.
Beyond the Limit has gone beyond its limit to find answers so as to help everyone go through life with ease. Join Muthoni Maina every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Starting this September at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, The Realtor brings it all to perspective. We identify a property, discuss and demonstrate the journey towards ownership.
Professionals who have integrity, and from their catalog you can easily read that these are professionals who are able to deliver.
Everywhere you go, you have to up your games. You have to go with the trends.
Not forgetting the margins as well as the risks that come along.
The runaway prices of the land. We are saying that it's something that we can never go without mentioning. Any developer will not go without
Perhaps the last laps of this very segment with Anita Nkirote as well as Josephat Kamanya, all politicians, young tax, and in the space of politics as well, always willing to represent us in specific quarters. And I keep saying that those ones that are willing and present their names for the same, those ones we have to appreciate and celebrate. And so as we get to this conversation, the expectations of the naming of the cabinet was saying this week, because I mean, perhaps to instill that pressure to the president for him to realize that we really need to see the cabinet and know how possible his government then is going to steer the country forward successfully. And in the conversation of the cabinet, there is that aspect of women, there's that aspect of, region, there's that aspect of, I've not had people articulating the question of the young tax so much so, but I would want to imagine that at least we need 2-3 dockets that will be having young faces representing this. It's even hard for women. And so, Nkirote, as you talk about, representation for the youth, you also are talking about that one for women.
Yes.
We have made strides, at least that much we have to acknowledge as women.
Yes.
But as the young ones, what are the chances that this very crucial dockets that are at the heart of the growth of a nation would be bestowed on the hands of the young?
Yes, thank you so much, Linda. You've actually given me a new perspective because I was looking at it maybe in terms of the youth. Now, fortunately, the men, let me call them the Ruto men, are the Ruto young men to be specific. The only card, the card they bring to the table is not about just being young. I mean, rumored, if you look at the people like young people like Ndindi Nyoro, he's been Kiharu MP for 10 years. Is it 10 years?
This is the second term.
This is the second term. I mean, and he's had, when you look at the polls or highest performing members of parliament, he falls in that category. Now you've given me, you've talked about young women, underline young women, in terms of going to the cabinet in the CS's position. I'll talk about the CS position later. I saw the advert. Yes.
For PS.
Yes. When I look at young women and underline young women, I've not had names coming up. I've heard of maybe Alice Wahome. I've heard of other people who are strong in the party, but I've not had a name of any young woman. But the good thing, I'll give credit where it's due, I've seen them in the assemblies. I don't know if it's deliberate or what. They're just like, okay, you first go to the assemblies, but for the national, we'll wait. There are very many in the county assemblies. But for the national government, I wouldn't be too skeptical to see a young woman as yes. If we see, hey, we will celebrate and we'll be very happy.
Yeah.
But most of it has been the names that are coming up, Aisha Jumwa, you know, real strong women in politics who've been there in the UDA since inception. We have Beatrice Nkadha, Tharaka-Nithi. Most of them have actually been in at this space for a couple of minutes. But for the youth, I'm sure it will be 2 to 3 dockets from word going round in town. And it will be vibrant. We can even see some of them. You know, some of these people, it may be 7 days or 8 days, but if you see someone has gone to the UK, they're also in the US.
We know the faces that are going to...
we know, we just know the faces. I mean the body language. You can read the body.
If we look at these people, then it means by-elections and by-elections, if that is what we're going to look at. Because also some of these faces that appear to be young and all that and have accompanied the president to these spaces are those ones that have been elected in respective positions.
Yes.
Really, do you want us to treat Kenyans to so many
by-elections? I don't think there'll be that many. Okay, it's 3, but of course it's about 3, but
it's still with finality.
it might be 3. No, it might be 3 or so.
Yeah.
But I feel the value. You know, it's the same thing. Somebody asked me, in Azimio, told me, if Baba wins, do you think he'll run a cabinet without James Orengo? Do you think he'll run a cabinet? There are people you've worked with for years. You know how they operate. You know their finesse. You know, like a person from I'm from Tharaka-Nithi, so if I say it, get used to it. Yeah, a person like Kindeke is a person that you've worked with him over the years. So when you're choosing your cabinet, and he'll also tell you, even when you become a member of parliament, when you're choosing for a PA, you're looking for a PA or a driver or a secretary, most of the time, Linda, you'll say, who was I working around with? What do they bring to the table? Well, as much as there are, of course, other Kenyans who are qualified to do the same, you also want insiders, especially when you're looking at your agenda and your manifesto. You ask yourself, who mostly can deliver on part A? Who mostly can I trust to deliver on part B? Yes, someone may be qualified and all that, but can you trust them? Do you expect loyalty, or will you be looking at the papers every day of leaked information because you don't know who you're working with? So for me, that whole synergy of who you're working with becomes very critical. For the space of the youth, I am sure there'll be space. For the space of women, I'm sure there'll be width, but the space for young women must still fight for their slots at the national level, not just county levels.
Yes, appointive, nominative positions, not pretty much of an ease for the women to get and the young techs to get. But even as they strive and struggle to get these positions, delivery is at the heart of this. And we have seen the cabinet of President Uhuru Kenyatta, with his deputy, that is Deputy William Ruto, while word had it that it was like a 50-50 affair. Some of them picked, young faces that were fronted by the deputy himself, according to what it is that we were told. Really not performing to the level that we would have expected. How then does he make sure that he strikes that balance to get the right faces that will indeed deliver and perhaps justify the reason why we need more young techs, in these spaces or these appointive spaces?
I think it's a question of competency. And much as we still talk about the affirmative action, I look at it also in a different way. I would rather we lean more towards meritocracy. Today, the chairman of the Council of Governors is the Kirinyaga Governor, Anne Waiguru. She is sitting on that position on merit, not because she's a woman. And that's what I would also want to steer this conversation towards. Let somebody be given a position, nomination, elected, whatever the capacity of the position is, by the virtue of meritocracy. You merit, you are competent enough. It only happens that your gender is male or female. Because we don't want to run the risk of affirmative action higher, and then we have the issue on delivery. So the president, when it comes to picking, is not just the CE, the cabinet and the PAs, secretaries. It is the entire structure of the government that he wants to run and the personnel he needs. He has to rely on competency. Being a close friend does not qualify you to be competent. Yeah. And we don't want this nation, again, running into a crisis because Linda was given a position they are not able to deliver on. Remember, people have been questioning the education CS, Magoha, for a long time, the kind of decisions he makes. Are they sensitive to Kenyans, to parents, when you say, kids go home, come back after 2 weeks, and then the next week pay school fees, full amount. You know, we haven't seen a revision or even proposal of revision of school fees. So I'm not saying he's incompetent, but I'm just saying the service delivery is questionable when you look at the education. And he's a professor. So the competency has to be in line with the set skills that are required for you to serve the mandate you're being given. I want to believe young people are going to have their position when it comes to the CAs, the same as women, because I think in this government this is the first time we have the highest number of female, both elected and nominated members. And Knox Vegas has made us all proud by having a lot of women in office. So let's give it time. And I agree, there should be space for each and every Kenyan. We don't have, this marginalization has to come to an end. We cannot be talking about marginalization in the UNGA, the UN General Assembly, and then when we come back home, we marginalize our own people. No.
Yeah.
This, we have to level the playing field for everybody so that young people, both male and female, can feel the need to rise and also identify mentors.
Right.
We don't know how to go back to the days where you used to ask a young lady like, oh, who is your... what kind of a person would you want to be? You hear people saying of Oprah Winfrey. I have nothing against her, but we need to have local champions. We want people to look at Linda and say, okay, I want to be like Linda. I want to be like Anne Waiguru. I want to be like Nkirote. Because she's a person who has grown within our own local social setting to levels of being admired. That's what I want to see. And that's why I keep talking about young tax. And that's why I keep telling old people, please, know when to step out of the arena.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, well, interesting. In all this, the Kenya Kwanza government, your expectation of them, and where do we steer the country moving forward? Just looking at the fact that we appreciate that, you know, in 7 days, so much changes that we've witnessed, you know. In a span of blink of an eye, you have the judges sworn in. Before you know it, the subsidy of fuel scrapped off. Before you know it, subsidy for fertilizer. Before you know it, so much is happening on the ports, and you know, business now back to usual or to normalcy on the other side. But also on the other side, Naivashans are crying foul, and all this. Your expectations?
For me, for now, it's a watch and see game. I cannot afford to be highly optimistic. Because when these guys came to town, they talked about the whole hustler narrative and movement. But when they came, you remember the whole talk about subsidies. It changed. You remember the talk about unga prices. Now they're like, you know, it's not about unga prices, but we are going to give you fertilizers. Then the first thing I see there is Russia is giving free fertilizer to Africa. The next thing I see is we only have 93 million in our coffers. Next thing I see is a lot of foreign travel. Next thing I see is a delay even in naming the CSs. Of course, I know that's deliberate.
Yes.
It's deliberate because you have to wait for the leadership, House leadership to take place, because then now you can interview them so that the legislatures can make their tick. I'm looking at the quality of legislatures they have. I'm looking at corruption, previous corruption scandals. I'm also looking at, according to me, the only change actually you guys can do is mostly on the agriculture sector. Because when it comes to infrastructure, Kibaki already laid out the structures. And Uhuru even did more in terms of kilometers and accessibility in this country. So anything you do infrastructure is maybe, let's say, minimal or a top-up or completion or maybe roads that were halfway. So it makes you now concentrate on agriculture. And the problems in the agriculture sector are huge. You're looking at the sugar industry. I mean, at least the lawyers have been able to negotiate getting a speaker. They might get the chief minister. They might get finance. I don't know. It's a wait and see game. Yeah. But I'd also look at them and I'd be asking, where is your sugar industry? Because now where it is Kenya must be able to feed itself, and it must be able to even import, because as agriculture is our backbone. I saw avocados being frozen because of pesticides. How much pesticides are we using? Are we bringing back extension officers? So for me, and now the conversation even in the world is about, actually in the words of the president himself yesterday, he talked about climate resilient agriculture. That's what he talked about. Yes. So I'm looking to see that. I'm looking at that in terms of COP27. And then some of the scandals in the last, since 2007, agriculture, the people currently in government and the ones who've been involved. The maize scandal, if you remember, issues at NCPB. I remember the Eldoret guy, the man, what was he called? He was having stress. The guy who was doing men's conference. He had stress with his maize. What was his name? I'm sure.
Oh, the one who passed on.
Yes. Kibor. Yes. What are you telling the Eldoret farmer who has acres of maize, and then you're telling them, see, we don't have space for storage, and then now they praise the prices of unga are skyrocketing. Of course, coming from Mount Kenya, I'm asking myself about tea and coffee, about the prices, about inputs, about the time of payment, about even management. I'm hearing you guys are going to have Ministry of Cooperatives. What will these cooperatives be cooperating on if farmers are uprooting tea and coffee? So, Alelah, for me, the agenda is agriculture, climate change, and the environment. And I expect a solid, being that the president was a minister of agriculture around 2007 to he's also a serious farmer and a serious importer. So I'd be expecting to see very serious changes in the agriculture, environmental, and the cooperatives landscape. Right. And it's all about management.
Okay.
Well, I think we officially have an opposition. Azimio, they are playing.
They're doing a good job.
They're doing a good
job. So far, so good.
So far, so good. And we are pleased.
I hope they do the same in Parliament.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah. What I know is that, we all understand that agriculture has been, or rather for a long time, agriculture was #1 foreign exchange earner. And until we revitalize our agriculture sector, I do agree the Kenya we have is going to run into chaos. And that's why you see we talk about agriculture all the time. We know the moment we invest in production, I mean, if you subsidize unga, you have to do that for the entirety of your lifetime. But if you invest in production and we have enough for our local consumption, definitely the prices will go down. So it's going to take time. I know the expectation card that we are expected to hit by the Azimio, generally by the nation, because even people who voted for the Kenya Kwanza have expectation. It's very high. The card is very high, but that scorecard has to get ticking as soonest possible. The reason fertilizer was the first thing that had to be subsidized is so that we can start stimulating the production. There is no crop that comes off less than 3 months. Maize, beans, and all these cereals. So we need at least 3 to 4 months, maybe 6 months, for us to have the first harvest that maybe can be induced into the local consumption. So I do agree. I'm a farmer myself, so I know all these things when you talk about the input, the cost of production being high, the pricing, and also the farmers' profit margin being very low. I agree we have to do a very radical intervention and then bring back agriculture to 2 things. One, subsistence farmers need to be able to have quality foods for their own consumption. Because remember, poor feeding leads to a very dilapidated health system.
Right.
So you can keep on building hospitals, but the best hospitals you need, the best doctors you need to have as a nation are the farmers.
Right.
And once you have the farmers get it right, and they're able to feed the nation, the malnutrition, all these food-related health crises, which we call lifestyle diseases, will go down.
Right.
Because Kenya, we don't need to have frozen foods that much. We can have fresh food every day, all year round.
And I mean, it's being done across the world.
It's being done. So we need to look at the modern. That's why we need the young tax in government. We need to look at the modern farming systems, people who are able to embrace new ideas and run with it to maximize on the output. So I want us to be kept in check. I want us to do a diligent job. I want us to serve the Kenyans the way they deserve to. I want us to revitalize the agricultural sector so that we can have this idea of kids going to school hungry needs to come to an end.
I agree. Yeah. Let's close it. Your parting shot.
My parting shot is Kenya is one country. The elections are over. Doesn't matter if we voted for Azimio or we voted for hustlers. We pray all the best to the new government and all its endeavors. And for some of us will be here to keep you guys in check.
Yeah, we need young people. We need the government. We need the nation to be at peace so that the developmental agenda can continue growing. Everybody to come up, step up, and contribute to the growth and development of this nation, irregardless of your political affiliation.
All right. Yeah. And I will purpose to always have the Young Turks on set, at least once in a while, if not Thursdays, to make sure that we have these conversations, because it's at this space that we also grow ourselves in terms of understanding. It appears the oldies do not want to teach us this game, and therefore we have to figure out the direction so that tomorrow then we have a country. And on that note, we say thank you so much.